Nestled up a bit in the valley is a house. It's like a lot of houses. It has walls and windows and doors. I know things about the house, things a lot of other people don't. On quiet days, mostly on Mondays, doves roost and coo together in pairs on the lawns. There's nothing quite like disturbing a dozen doves canoodling. Other birds have made their home there. They've raised their children there. Right where the gutter meets the drain outside the office window, in fact. Their contributions to conversations on the phone or video conference make everybody on the other end of the line really jealous. Golden plovers shimmer and shine while gathering what they need to feed their families there. And at night, the front lawn and the ramp to the lot are overrun. Slowly, very slowly, by snails. Giant ones. Still sleepless nights are kept company by a heavenly host of stars there. And the crescent moon spreads wide its Cheshire cat grin, almost like a knowing brother, awaiting the golden morning when mist will catch the rainbows cast wide and perfect by his sister sun. Many people will live an entire life and never see a house like this house, nestled up a bit in the valley. Of course, I'm talking about the house next door. I mean, I can see explaining it now, it sounds like it might be this house, but I'm really talking about the neighbor's house. No, just kidding. All joking aside, today is Earth Day. It's not exactly the kind of holiday we're used to celebrating here in the United States, though we have been trying to celebrate it since 1970. And not being entirely sure myself the best way to celebrate this holiday, I did what I imagine a lot of us did. I went down to Walgreens and searched for the Earth Day section in the card aisle there. Funniest thing, couldn't find the section. Did any of you find a Earth Day section? Oh, all right. I think that might be the best case. There was a Nurses Day section, and the kindness and the care that the nursing profession offers this world makes a good start. It's a good idea. I also found cards for the fast-approaching Administrative Professionals Day, and I think we can all agree here that recognition and gratitude for our own administrator, Suzette, is certainly worthy of a card, at the very least. But among the cards, there were none for Earth Day. Marie led us in a time of sharing of the blessings we've received from this earth, and something seemed entirely right about that. It seemed like the right way to acknowledge this day for so many of us. And it would make a lot more sense to do that than a card, because it's kind of hard to imagine a spirit of the earth hoping that we might cut down a tree, add chemicals to the pulp, dry the pulp out, put that piece of dried pulp into another specially folded piece of dried tree pulp, and then put that letter in a box where a truck run on fossil fuels, extracted from the earth, would pick up the letter, deliver it somewhere, and then someday in the coming weeks, another truck, also run on fossil fuels, will pick up this piece of pulp that was discarded and then put it somewhere else, likely back in the earth, and maybe in a landfill or burned up into the atmosphere. Yeah, something tells me that that is not what the earth had in mind to say thank you for Earth Day, this or any year. So let us all rejoice that there is no Earth Day section at our local Walgreens. Yes. See, when we shared one another those blessings of the earth that it has been to each one of us, we were reminded of something really, really important. Something we actually talk about every time new members join our congregation. It's the notion that a blessing is only a blessing when it is shared. By listening aloud to what others felt blessed by, we offer the gift of listening while we receive the gift of hearing. And the warmth and understanding that comes with the blessing of sharing like this reminds us that there is more to remembering a day like this than a card in the mail. The experiences we treasure the most are experiences that arrive unbidden, that arrive unasked for. And there is a word for receiving a blessing, a gift, an experience, especially with others, that was unbidden or unasked for, and that word is grace. Now, grace is one of those words, right? It's one of those words that some of us, a few of us here, we've got a little history with, right? Some of us might hear the word grace and think of sitting at the dinner table and being thankful for these thy gifts. Others of us have a slightly more painful recollection of grace as a word that represents a hope that we will be saved from an eternal trial, something that only the force saving us from that trial can grant. And that's a hard way for some of us to think about grace, maybe even still. Some of us might not have any reaction at all. We might just love the word. After all, in other languages, it gives us the word gracias, grace. In some ways, that might be the best of all, a clean slate. But whatever occurs, there are reactions to that word, grace. Maybe right in our bodies, right in this place. When we hear that word grace, some people's minds might snap shut, or you wondered, where's he going with this? Is he finally going to out himself as the closet evangelist I feared he was? Well, yeah, I am. But not like you might be thinking. See, there are ministers in our tradition who are making a life's work of trying to reclaim those religious words that were taken from them and held hostage by our colleagues in other traditions. And I applaud their efforts. It's important rehabilitative work. But frankly, getting into what other religious groups think grace is not interesting in the slightest. And there is a reason for that. It's not because there's some simple, clearly defined definition of grace that those groups are missing, even though there is. And it's not because there's some great body of theological writing that sorts through this thorny theological issue and supports an open and affirming view of grace, even though there is. And it's not even that there are some Unitarian Universalist alternate meaning for grace that sidesteps some of these questions, even though there is. Now, it's a lot simpler than that for me. There's a simple solution to the troubles make around this word grace, and I have found it because whenever the word grace is spoken in my presence, I cannot see anything other than the 1-minute sequence in Rear Window, that classic film by Alfred Hitchcock, when Grace Kelly enters Jimmy Stewart's apartment. I can see some of you nodding. Welcome to the land of nod. Yes. You can laugh if you want, but Grace Kelly, to me, is no laughing matter. Her face appears in the shot framed in a scarf, and then she moves closer to Jimmy Stewart to say hello and to kiss him. And her profile eclipses Jimmy Stewart's face like an earth passing in front of the sun. And then she moves through the apartment as if carried by little invisible birds from place to place until she fulfills all that anyone anywhere could ever know of grace. So, if you're struggling with the concept of grace, you're welcome. You may have a definition of the word for the cost of a simple video rental. Now, because I know not everybody has the gift for utter distraction that I do, there are some other ways to think about grace, that which we receive unbidden or unasked for. And some of them are a lot closer to home for us than a movie filmed in 1954. Grace comes in any number of forms, really, if you know where to look. So let's just take a few numbers, shall we? 38, That is the number of people from our own community and throughout our surrounding community who came together this year for an entire weekend of Jubilee training with Paula Cole-Jones. That's a good number. 21. That is the number of people who have signed the book here and become members of this community just this past year. 3. That is the number of organizations whose missions to address homelessness, to counter racism and oppression, and to seek humane solutions to criminal justice reform, all missions in concert with our own, that we have supported and shared our offerings with so far this year. 2. That is the number of parades we marched in together, sharing a message of unquestioning love and compassion set to music with all to see. 2. That is the number of times our pop-up choir has taken part in worship and enlivened the beautiful community of music makers among us. And 1. That is the number of congregations who had adopted the 8th principle, answering the call to take discernible steps toward dismantling systems of oppression in our world before this congregation decided to adopt it. In these walls, in these streets, in your hearts, the work you believe is important, the work you want to see done in the world, the work it takes to change this world into somewhere compassion grows, somewhere justice thrives, and somewhere joy rings out anew, that work is getting done. And it's getting done right. And here is the thing. No matter how many committees, teams, working groups, boards, councils, or task forces we all sit on, no matter how much we want to hope it's true, none of those things were accomplished alone. None of us here made all those things happen by ourselves. I know for some of you it feels like that's the case sometimes. But already, there is more happening in this community than any one person could possibly ever do alone. All of these blessings come from sharing with one another, so that what we are receiving, what we are getting in response to those who made Jubilee possible, in response to remarkable people who organize an entire demonstration against gun violence for teenagers, in response to you precious, hopeful souls who inscribed your name in the history of this congregation, what we are getting is the shared blessing that we could never receive alone, for which we would never have known to ask, for which we would never have known to bid come into our lives. It doesn't work like that, grace. No. It just happens. It just comes. It just arrives. That is how grace enters upon the scene. Like the sure motion of the earth on the tides, with a beauty that is truly indescribably wonderful. No matter how much our words strain to name it, they fall short. And so we have a word, and we call it grace. Like that. Seriously. After the service today, something new is going to happen. We're going to sing Hawaii Aloha. Don't worry. That's not the new part. But after we sing together, there are going to be 10 people around the church. And they're going to be there because our annual pledge drive begins, well, right now. So these 10 people you'll likely recognize, will each have one of these. For those of you who have no idea what these are, and for those of you who think you have an idea of what these are, and for anyone else who is just curious, some people around here call these pledge forms. The implication is that you put your name on it, you fill it out, and you pledge a certain amount of money to your community here. That's one way to think of it. That's fine. It's a totally practical and very useful way to think about it. But consider this for a moment. Consider whether these are not so much forms for you to make a pledge to your community, but whether these are ways of showing gratitude for the pledges made by your community to you on a daily, on an hourly, and on a second-by-second basis. The pledge your board of directors makes to prudently and wisely guide our community. The pledge these volunteer musicians make every Sunday to bring joy into your hearts. I mean, the oboe, the tenor sax, reading children's stories. Just one person alone is doing all of those things. The pledge the hospitality team makes to be sure that there is conversation happening. Yeah, there's coffee and treats and other things, but we know what it's really about. The building and the grounds team makes this pledge to keep this building running. The RE team makes this pledge to care for our children upstairs. The worship team makes this pledge to enliven our spirits every week. And it's the pledge I make to speak words of love and understanding. And it's a pledge I have made this past week to stay with you, this congregation, for yet another year. And I'm really looking forward to it. And there are so many more pledges people make to one another here, because it is the pledge every person makes here in this only Unitarian Universalist fellowship on these islands with a building to call its home, to take one another's hands every week and sing out against a hurting world so that we can know some part of love. Yeah, these are pledge forms. Yeah. They support all these things you've come to love and to expect about this community we share, but they are also something more, how we choose to dream together. Not only what has been, what we know and hope of love, but how we choose to dream together of what might be. What we can't in this moment possibly conceive of. What might give us all a chance to offer our neighbors, our friends, our beloved family here something beautiful. Something sacred, something we have never seen before, something unbidden, something unasked for. That is also what these are asking you to consider. Because the finest, the most outstanding parts of any life are always those parts, those moments, those gifts which don't arrive in the usual ways by truck or by mail. They appear suddenly, or maybe over time, but they appear in ways we can't really imagine, and then stay with us forever. See, there is a home. It's nestled up a bit in the valley. It's not like any other home I know. The people there are different than people in other places. Somehow the things they do in this life matters there. They teach their children to love all children on the earth, even when loving some of them is hard. They talk about all kinds of things there. They talk about science and psychology and religion and music and popular music. But somehow, everything they talk about ends up being about loving each other a little better every day. There are people there who seem to work day and night to make a place where the brokenhearted, the sacred, and the lonely, the scared, will find peace and calm and comfort. Breezes blow through that home, and they carry the hopes of so many who may one day know the home that we have found there. There are many houses like that house, but there is no other home like it on earth. No one there knows for sure what's coming, but that's okay. Faith lives there. And no one there can glimpse fully all of the new blessings each person they meet might share with them. But that's okay. That's what we're counting on. That's why grace lives there too. Nestled up in the valley a bit, where our heart is, at home. And may it ever be so. Blessed be, and amen. Please rise now as you are willing and able in body and spirit, and join in singing our hymn of reflection, When Your Heart is in a Holy Place.